Hey Alex, I was looking the other day at some of the prolific amount of videos about something called like men's rights activism or the other kind of I guess similar term,
Mhm.
which is men going their own way. And it's apparently got its own lingo, and I know you've done at least a few, if not several, videos about topics dealing with one or either of those. I mean, could you give me a little bit of a primer of sorts on what their deal is, what the concept is?
Sure, and it's kind of funny. One of my most watched videos is "Why Don't Chase the Women of Today's World," which is on YouTube. I think I get more views and comments on that than any other video I've done in the history of YouTube. I've done some other videos that I've got, but I mean, it was the timing really. And MGTOW is a term for acronym men going their own way. I will say as we start this that there is obviously a very vast difference in perspective as to how this divide between man and woman actually has come to be. Not everybody sees it. I think it's more noticeable in urban areas and with people that are heavily affected by mainstream media propaganda, not just the rape hysteria stuff, but the economics. We are living in a day and age where there's a fair amount of reverse discrimination going on, not only racially but sexually, and reactionary behavior to where some people feel like there should be more women than men, for example, in the workplace. There's been major changes with economics. And because we're not actually becoming richer as a nation, we're becoming poor. For some people to have something, someone else has to lose it, like a job, for example. So we've seen major changes in economics, major changes in the demographics of who's working and who's not. As a result, you have more broke-ass men, especially since the 2008 banker bailout fiasco. We're now living out the aftermath of the newly social engineered world where men have far less than before. So there's many aspects to that question. That's actually a question that can go on for many hours that I can't answer now. But to sum it up, as we get deeper into the subject, more and more men have found themselves single than ever. And this is actually fairly widespread. Some men aren't seeing it, others are. And then you have people like myself that are giving a really unique interpretation as to why that is, that you're not hearing from others. Many others are going in more of a direction of gender warfare, which I'm absolutely against. So I think that the things that I cover on this channel are way beyond MGTOW, but they are striking a chord with men of our generation that are seeing a rise in local females, people in their area, distrusting them, generalizing about them, a lot of things regarding economics being something that way too many Americans are obsessing upon, especially American women, especially in this day and age. There was a time in our nation's history where the amount of Federal Reserve notes that a man had was a little less important. It was a different society. It was a different generation. There are generations of men and women that came before us where perhaps the male and female worked together to build their local business that supported their farm, that supported their property. And we've seen, obviously, a major shifts from the rural way of life to the urban. So as I throw this back in your corner, there are so many that have never actually even been discussed by the MGTOW movement, factors that have resulted in this massive boom of single men and major shift in the ways that women of our generation, time, space, reality of our culture are looking at men. The MGTOW movement of sorts is, a collection of people commentating, I would say, including YouTube, people that have gone their own way. And they're using the hashtag to pretty much signify that they're opting out, from the dating scene. And it is expected of many men to pursue the woman, as part of their, if you're going to get laid, if you're going to go out on a date, you ask her out. She doesn't ask you out. And it's that part of the old world that's still in the current world, even though a lot of women out there believe in things progressing forward in a certain way, it still is expected for the male to pursue the female. But when you're in a day and age with rape hysteria, when you're in a day and age where there's massive amounts of money that's just hemorrhaging out of this country, and men are losing their jobs, they're losing their value, if you will, in a day and age where a man's wealth is his value, more so to today's female than any other period in history, I would say. Not just to save face, but to not lose their spirit, if you will, right? To keep going on, to have the will to live, to not become an alcoholic, to explore one's spiritual side, get involved in the alternative media and speak about the things that matter. And I'm not saying there's no women into men in the alternative media, but there's very few. And this is not really a disputable fact. This is a fact. This is life in this matrix. Men that get involved in truth telling are the last in line. That is probably the particular spin and message that I bring to the MGTOW commentary. What I see from a lot of the other ones is anger, because they're in the initial stages of awakening. And I can also more directly see the links between men not getting laid and aggressive or warlike behavior, which is something that a lot of people might, but they don't really think about it. So there are actual social consequences of a society that's not able to connect with, say, the opposite sex members of the society. So I would say that we're on the road to a very dangerous society in America. And so a lot of the issues that we've already been talking about, and the whole, the Muslims are invading and they're taking all the white women, that is an offshoot of less men getting laid within the society.
Well, from the various videos that I was watching regarding this topic, I was more just befuddled more than anything else. I was just kind of amazed that this was even a grievance, by some people. I guess I first heard it mainly from an not really an odd combination, but from a combination of Stefan Molyneux and Chris Cantwell, both of whom are openly avowed anarchists. And the way that they kind of describe it is a little bit different. I mean, Cantwell's more of kind of this emotionally charged, yelling at the top of his lungs. I mean, he's basically an anarchist version of Alex Jones, unfortunately. And Molyneux is a little bit more...
Oh, by the way, I believe he's a deranged individual. I believe they're both deranged individuals without any spiritual backbone, the two men you're referring to. So, yeah. Again, a lot of the people commentate on this sound like they're on the verge of committing a crime themselves. They sound so angry and so confused as to why these things are happening. Back to you.
Yeah, well, Stefan Molyneux at least tries, at least in his own way, to at least present a more, I guess you could say, an intellectual justification for it. But whether it's one way or the other, they're both supporting this whole concept of maybe not MGTOW specifically, but the more broader MRA or men's rights activist position. And I don't know if that correlates at all with the fact that both of them like Donald Trump. I don't know if that's necessarily a connection there, or if it's just a coincidence. Maybe it's not a coincidence. But that's something else I've noticed is really kind of that. But it's it's kind of interesting, right? I mean, a lot of the MRAs from the other types of videos I've seen, Alex, they really just like to wax eloquent about how their own particular flavor on the demographic kaleidoscope is getting oppressed. And I don't know, man. It's almost like some of the MRAs sound like social justice warriors in a roundabout sense. Like, it's the victim mentality. I'm a victim because the evil feminists won't sleep with me.
You're right. Well, MRA, that is slightly different. It's not the same thing as MGTOW.
Okay.
And so I've always stayed clear of the MRA stuff, and a lot of the stuff in the pages, the Facebook pages that are MRA are really insane, very sexual. Sometimes they'll post straight up porn. Women are sex objects. Women are sex objects to a lot of the men that are posting, and they do not seem to understand why they're not getting laid. Going back to this, there is a biological response for most humans that do not have spiritual backbone. It's aggression when you aren't getting sex. Rape was one offshoot of that. The other is to turn on other men. And so it's interesting that the whole Islamic, oh my God, they're invading, is happening as the other is happening. Now, I need to add in a few other things. Not every male is going to experience the same thing. Some men are in more adverse climates environmentally. Portland, Oregon happens to fit that bill. You know, you talk about these social justice warriors, and you look at the video, Trump supporters shouted down in Portland, Oregon by anarchists. And Portland has that history of anger and rage, and let's just destroy things in the street like we literally are one gene away from a monkey, which some people argue that we are. But not all humans are acting that way. So take into account, I'm from a very angry environment. I'm from an environment where men are feared, especially of darker skin, in a mostly white city. And so my, I guess, contribution to this conversation is speaking to a mostly probably 95% white audience, maybe 99, because of the, you know, the culture I'm in, the country I'm in. I'd say nearly all of the listeners are white males that are my audience members. So I feel like I'm kind of giving them another perspective of the darker man's plight. Because there are a lot of, there is all this, you know, be guilty about being white and for the wrong reasons. Not there are any right reasons. Nobody should be guilty about what they are. I think that people can have remorse about the millions dead in their name. That is what's missing. That is the missing link. But things have been so perverted in this archonic realm, as I choose to call it, which also means ruler in Greek. So it doesn't mean that someone has to subscribe to the supernatural to use the term archonic, which literally means ruler. Okay, so a lot of people need to see things from other people's racial perspective, for example. It's not just about the white men being thrown away. That's like one perspective that I'm hearing. From what I saw, it was like white women that prefer black men or white men, and that's it. If you're mixed or Middle Eastern looking, you're garbage. That was the vibe that I got. And you want to add an alternative media on top of that? Fuck you, buddy. Seriously, fuck you, you conspiracy nut, homeless living in a vehicle. So I've kind of taken on a number of different roles, going MGTOW, being alternative media, and off the grid, and half Middle Eastern. Somehow I must love the idea of being really, really different in every single category. So if people really want to realize what's going on, they got to ditch the reactionary anger. Because, Kyle, it is going on. Something has happened with female sexuality across the board. To where whether it's, you know, being on the computer is fulfilling that need that used to come through sex, whether it's the aftermath of Fukushima and it's incremental, or it's cyclical. This part of the solar cycle is an adverse part of the solar cycle to romance. But check again in 3 years. And we'll see what's going on in 3 years. But I know I saw a shift. And before I saw females lose complete interest in me, I noticed they got really, really, really kinky in ways I won't describe on the radio in like the same year. And it was 2009 and 10, leading up to 2012. And there was a switch that I felt afterwards. Now, one could argue, well, it's Alex, it's because you stopped wearing a suit and tie and you're no longer a Portlander and you're a dirty hippie off the grid. Well, I hear your argument, but I'm starting to hear from other men, hence the MGTOW YouTube social media explosion. Other men are also reporting things from their perspective, mostly white, mostly angry, mostly ignorant. And I would just ask that they kind of open up their understanding and realize, no, it's not necessarily that they're going black or Arab. And I'm here to tell from a half Persian perspective that no, I don't think they're just jumping out into other racial groups. Something else is at play, and it's economics. It literally is, how big is your house? Not how big is your cock, or how great is the sex with you, or do you fulfill my dreams? You know, the woman going, do you support me as a being? It's what do you physically have? And are you able to keep your mind outside of talking about the issues that matter? I've dated a lot of women in Portland, Kyle, so I got a little bit of experience real quick. They're not looking for the alternative media male. That's the last thing they're looking for. They're out there, but they're very few, and we're talking needle and haystack reality. So the conversation really also comes down to the male as well. Is he involved in speaking truth? Or is he another drug-taking zombie? Because you can be a drug-taking zombie with no money, living in your van, and have hot chicks. If you're playing that role of like the big Lebowski dude, man, I'm the dude. I'm sure you've met people like that, Kyle, in Texas.
Yeah.
People that are fakes. Men that are fakes. Have you met them, yes or no?
Yes. And they disgust me.
I mean, you live in Austin, Texas. You don't even have to answer me.
Yeah, fair enough. And I wish there was more personal authenticity coming from them. I mean, however they want to portray themselves, whatever their genuine personality is, I wish they would just be more honest because, seriously, and I guess I'll admit it for the first time here, even I was mentally considering violating the non-aggression principle and slapping these guys something silly because it was just so infuriating to me that the machismo, the posturing, it's like, really? It's like, I mean, it's really kind of just disgusting that they would rather engage in some sort of fake consumerist fill in the blank rather than be true and honest with themselves about who they are, who they really are, and kind of going from there. I mean, it's almost like they want to fit into a mold that was shaped by someone else, like Madison Avenue social engineers, to name one possible culprit. But instead of carving out their own destiny. And that's really kind of disconcerting for me. Actually, sorry, something I just thought of. One thing I saw in several of the more MGTOW videos specifically, Alex, that I've seen by some other people, is there's this lingo, perhaps you've heard of it. Hold on, it's like 3 categories. You have your, oh gosh, that's also a Matrix reference too. It's like red pill man, blue pill man, purple pill man, and then there's like definitions for these or whatever the hell. I'm trying to remember exactly how it was phrased, but I remember thinking that when I was watching it, like, oh wow, okay, so according to these, the way they're explaining, the guy was kind of explaining all this, I guess arguably, hypothetically, if I was to be forced into a box, I guess maybe I would be closest to being the purple pill man, maybe. But it's rather interesting because there's also, kind of what was mentioned in some of the other podcasts, that they want to put people in the box, right? They said you have to be, if you're not a red pill man, you're bad. You're being bewitched by those bad women. It's like, oh, really? Get a life.
Right. Well, ultimately, sex can be used to enslave someone, but this is definitely the argument where I can see sex is healing because I can see now all this mental illness that has come from all these people not getting laid. They're going batshit, Kyle. They're going batshit. I don't know what my advice will always be towards the spiritual. Don't focus just on your biceps and your body and your penis. Recognize that there's a spirit inside your body that's more than a horn dog male. And I'm going to leave my spiritual commentary at that. But this is ridiculous. Classification of men. So, I'm interested in contributing a different perspective to this thing called maybe I just come up with my own acronym because obviously there's a bunch of very underdeveloped males that are speaking on MGTOW. But, I mean, that's just a reflection of the underdeveloped males in our world, the boys that never become men, the boys that wear the super soldier outfit, the boys that play video games, the lack of men with balls, speaking with their birth name, be it a foreign name or not, telling the truth about the things that need to be discussed. Where's that? That is directly connected with this madness. So they don't want to discuss the larger issues with men and the fakeness. They just want to blame women. Well, they're not going to understand it then. Because there are books that literally lay out, and I looked at these books when I was young. I didn't buy them. Like, I saw their cover at the bookstore and never touched them and just kind of like scratched my head. How to get inside a woman's pants, how to lie to a woman. So there are people out there that as a modus operandi, they play that role. They play that mask. They may not be a millionaire, but they may wine and dine her as if they are. You know, wear the right shirts, have the next car. Her, she doesn't care about, you know, it's about the presentation. Like has anybody been to a nice restaurant? Do you really need to pay $50 for that steak and potato? It's about the sizzle. That's the whole motto of Ruth Chris Steakhouse. I bust there for 5 years. I've learned a lot from my life, about life. In my life, I've learned a lot about the galaxy, I feel. Now, at Ruth Chris Steakhouse, that was a micro for a macro. And I learned a lot there. Pouring water for countless tens of thousands of humans. It's all about the sizzle. It's about the presentation. It's not who you are. It's how you feel when you're with the person. Even if that feeling is induced, we will not get supernatural. Are there other factors that can control someone's sex drive? Absolutely. Be it a male rapist or be there a female who cannot stop dating the bad boy because her sexuality requires domination. Or the other bipolar. Notice bipolar, Kyle, the rise in bipolar behavior, or so it seems, and bipolar medication. You're either Democrat or you're Republican. You're either a Tea Party person or you're an occupier. I mean, it's you're either here or here. There is no middle way.
Or third position. Yeah.
Trying to keep this train of thought. There are females out there that either demand a male to dominate them, or a male who is hyper feminized, who does not wear the pants. Who knows? Maybe they get really kinky and she fucks him. The point is, he bows to the goddess. And Kyle, maybe you've never lived in Portland. No, you have not lived in Portland. So you don't have the same type of social engineering insight. But you do live in Austin.
Yeah.
And there are parallels between Austin and Portland. Now, I don't agree with labeling all men one way. and the MGTOW crowd that are not getting laid, that are having that hyperaggression running through their veins, all these men are beta males. Somebody actually commented, sent me a private message, you know, bring back the alpha male. So he's in the bipolar mode. We're either beta or we're alpha. Well, being the alpha male was part of that same hierarchy. So, yes, the women prefer the alpha male dominate destroyer, walk into a bar, pretend you're a tough guy, start a fight with an innocent dude having his drink in order to get those vaginal fluids going in the female who requires to see that man intimidate another man because it provides the false illusion of being a good protector. If the female's mind is full of Doritos and Big Macs, the thinking process is not going to be very clear. But being exposed to the act of violence and the male willing to do violence and the man willing to don the skull bones, helmet of death, and heaven forbid, go overseas and dominate a country and men, women, and children. Most of all, other women. Women that love the men that dominate the lives of other women in Middle Eastern countries. See, this is what I would consider to be things you would see in a mental hospital, to where people aren't kind of seeing cause and effect. Well, what could come about from this? And the people not identifying the connection between their veteran husband and them being choked in the middle of the night. And then again, going back to the hyperfeminized. The hyperfeminized male who is now neutered of aggression, who, and I'm not attacking men that wear tight pants specifically, but are there patterns? Are there patterns that we're seeing with some of the men being super feminized and they don't want to fight with anything and they're all about voting in the system and they're not involved in spreading truth? I mean, they're involved in, but the common denominator between the dominator and the hyperfeminized, unless, of course, she's wearing the pants, she makes the money, therefore she can control because she can kick him out at any moment in time. And there's been that role reversal, mind you, for a lot of adult men much older than us since 2008 that have become almost the property of certain females that are still, quote unquote, working. This is an unspoken epidemic, and there's shame associated with that. Just like there is for a woman being raped, there's shame associated with a man coming under full female fake goddess control. But it's happening, Kyle, quietly.
Well,
you say the wrong thing out in the streets with you. Well, that's why these men haven't become men yet, because they're not willing to go off grid. The unspoken dialogue, the unspoken elephant in the room is the off-grid solution to the MGTOW path. Because as long as we remain in the biggest cities on the earth, i.e. Los Angeles, Portland, Seattle, New York, Miami, Kansas City, Dallas, Texas, Austin, Texas, you name it, and other cities around the world, we are living in a modern socially engineered world where the female fake goddess sexual beauty is a higher value dollar level than a good male. We may have been wired to want to breed and have sex and, chase the female and conquer the female for a very, very long time. But there was a time in at least the last 100 years where decent men, I think on a level, although a lot of them have seemed to have been kind of ignored by society, it seems to me that we're in a sharp shift in values. And so what we're going to be left with, as I pause on this note in a minute, this is my forecast, are these sprawling transhumanistic cities with decent men willing to defend their family, to defend their tribe, to use alternative media. They will be wed out because of the peer pressure social circles that are dominating people's thinking process. And through the peer pressure mechanism, a woman's sexual nature can be changed. I'll say that again. A woman's natural sexual nature can be changed. What was attractive before can now become grotesque. What was grotesque before can now become one of the hottest things that ever was. So that's changing. The value of men are changing. And so I see the cities, I see the populations as being far more female than male, and the nature of the males left in the city that are able to survive, that have adapted their behavior, that have made sure their chest is shaved, that have made sure their beards are shaved, that have made sure that they are neutered in all the right places, they will be the dominant male expression of life in those urban areas, while other men, through natural selection, one could say, have gone off-grid or gone to smaller cities to retain their happiness. And so, whether someone believes this is an act of biology, an act of the sun, an act of the New World Order, an act of aliens, we can obsess all day about that. What I'm saying is something is happening. There has been a ripple in the matrix. We have seen the cat cross the path twice, to reference a scene in the movie The Matrix. Something is taking place in the matrix that is grossly perverting human relationships. So the MGTOW tag, the MGTOW YouTube, the MGTOW movement is an offshoot from that. But, and I don't have the answers, you're not getting the totality as to what's going on. You're not getting the answers yet as to, is this something linear? Will this continue to, is this like some fertility thing where women have lost complete sex drives? Kyle, I'm not seeing an open expression of sexuality or affection anywhere. I don't know what you're seeing in Austin, but I'm not even seeing like normal, like kissy-kissy, lovey-lovey behavior. I'm noticing more of a robotic, asexual. I'm not interested in anything but consuming something energy. Again, whether that's aliens, biology, sociology, mind control, or all the above, that depends on who you ask, but it's happening.
Yeah, yes, they are less human. And aside from what I mentioned in the other podcast about the woman that helped me with when the dry spaghetti accidentally got spilled when I was at the checkout line at the grocery store, aside from that, see, this is another reason I like you, Alex. When I was actually taking some notes when I was just listening to you right now, and you do help me think. There is...
Okay,
there are some problems.
You help me think. You help me get into the right... if a man is defending his country because he wants to defend his wife, I'm just going to throw this and shut up again. Mm-hmm. When a man is defending his country because of his wife or woman, he is motivated to step in front of the train. He will pick up that sword and he will fight that monster. Now remove him from the female and remove his incentive and watch what happens. Step back and look at our world right now. Pornography, video games, armed forces, candy bars, and McDonald's. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? We have been perverted and taken away from a natural state of protecting our mothers, protecting our daughters, and protecting the women in our lives. And those of us that have survived the broken family syndrome and even been thrown away by family members, female in some cases, we are living out the death of the family. And some of us are not alcoholics. There's a direct connection, Kyle, to the drug epidemic in our country and the same stuff that I've just been saying.
I could believe that. Well, it's interesting. You know, I've never liked bullies, and I've had some scrapes in the past, and I would prefer not to get too deeply into that. So the reality of physical violence is very real to me. And so when these other idiots like to brag about what they like to do and to certain people and all that, I just kind of look at them sideways and go, do you really want to do this? Really? And either they back off or something happens. And I've never gotten in trouble with the government or anything like that because there were always witnesses. And again, I would prefer not to get in my own life too much. But suffice it to say, what I will say here is that it's everything I can do to be to not directly deal with bullies and stop them. Because you were mentioning earlier about some of those so-called alpha males bullying the so-called beta males. And when I was listening to you describe that, I was actually trying to calm down. Because there have been some instances in my life where that's come up and I've dealt with it. Sometimes it was against me personally. Other times, actually more frequently than not, I intervened as a third party and stopped it. And so a lot of people really don't understand the realities of physical force, use of force issues, and such. And so, hell, that's actually, I like your videos on like martial arts done the right way, where it's more of like a calming, more self-disciplined type of thing. And I appreciate that too, because I mean, I kind of grew up in a similar manner, different disciplines and all that. And maybe that's a topic for another time, getting more into that. But right. A lot of people like to talk a lot of smack, and sometimes I feel like I just want to, not all of them that do this, but the worst offenders, even I consider violate the non-aggression principle and, smack them around a bit. But I've had to be disciplined and restrain myself because my natural inclination is to do that, to stop. Let me put it this way. I mean, I guess you could say that a lot of individuals of both sexes, I guess, are white blood cells. And as white blood cells, the point is to take out the threats. And that's what I'll just save for here. Some other things, too, you were mentioning about. I think a lot of what you were describing is really the Peter Pan syndrome, at least on the male side of the equation, with the little bread and circuses of whatever the hell. And I also think, to bring in the SJWs in one more time, I think the fake advocacy of social justice is also encouraging this too, where with the white guilt, with the white privilege, just to use two examples, and so forth. I think that's very much exacerbating a lot of the more stereotypical MGTOW and sometimes even MRA material as well. In fact, actually, you were using something else too. You were using an example of, or at least mentioning in passing about the subservient men to the dominating women or something to that effect. And that reminded me of something. I remember seeing a photo of a Bernie Sanders supporter who had a protest sign, and it said something to the effect of, I'm going to just kind of do this off the cuff. He said something about he needs feminism so that he doesn't feel guilty about enjoying his girlfriend's strap-on. And, and you know what, two things about that. One, whatever people do in their own private lives, that's their business. And I think that's just kind of obvious. Having said that, if someone is going to go public and, wave around, placards or say things in a very public manner on the record, on the public record and such like that, I mean, don't be surprised if you get called a cuck or some of the terms that some of the Donald Trump supporters call him, because, who knows? I mean, maybe in those very limited, instances, maybe that is deserved. I don't know. But what I am saying is I think there is very much a connection between the Peter Pan syndrome and the social justice nonsense. And I mean, let me just, one other observation too. And this is something that a lot of the social justice equality freaks have lobbied against myself. And, I'll say right now what I've told them many times. Your life is not my fault, and my life is none of your business.
Very well said. I also wanted to add one more thing to what I started. I talked about the super passive male, and I talked about the phony paper tough guy syndrome male, both which can really attract females that have been programmed to want that type of male. There's another, and he is the dancing clown. He's the guy with a great sense of humor. He is the guy that his goal is to give her the attention and to entertain her. And that could be either a feminine or alpha, or you can have a split personality with severe other issues. But the entertainment factor being that we're in this Hollywood, Tom Cruise, what's the other guy? Tom Green. And a lot of things are compared to celebrities now because the whole celebrity pop culture thing has really penetrated the brain. So if someone could be a good entertainer, and we live in this world of restaurants, people want what other people want. They see them out in the balcony. They're having a nice dinner. Costs a lot of money. It's entertaining. Nice music. I'm shocked how just entertainment by itself is enough for a lot of women. It sustains their attention span. It sustains that need for something.
It's the new daddy,
Again,
isn't
I'm
it?
looking at the larger pictures. I'm not playing the Bible, the seed, and the snake and the apple game. I'm not going there. The others are going there. Well, see, that's how women are. Well, this is a larger subject, but as far as I know, women came from men and women. A man and a woman created the female. They also create the male. So how can a male or female be inferior? If anything, I'm pushing back against this, all men are inferior, or men from this part of the country are inferior. And I'm trying to help people get through these stereotypes, get through the programming. And if we can understand that it's more than likely programming and maybe other factors, but the whole genetic disposition, if you're this race, behavioral disposition, if you're this sex, that type of thinking has to go if we're to understand that we've been in a lot of different periods of sociology, of male-female interactions and human sexuality. And here we are at the dawn of people buying sex robots and seeing how many men, like women in their cell phones, for the wealthy men, I guess, they're marketing them these sex robots that cost thousands of dollars. Sounds like a sad existence. I guess it can say no matter how much money you have in this day and age, with so many problems in relationships, what could be said about a society where a man would prefer a sex robot to a female?
Yeah, that's
it
just,
says a lot.
Yeah,
He's got the money. Yeah.
It does say a lot. And sorry, I did want to answer something you mentioned just a bit ago about like finding potential dates or partners or whatever the hell. It's interesting. If I was single now and actively looking, this would be a hellish time to do so. Like, I mean, like, me and the wife kind of, when we're out and about, and, sometimes we kind of, and this has always been our way. Well, sometimes we'll kind of point at folks and say, oh, what about that person? Oh, that's interesting. And, there's attractive. And it's not a status thing. It's more like a happy, jovial kind of, I don't want to say call it a game, but I guess that's the only word I can think of. But one thing that I kept noticing with that kind of tradition of ours that we've been doing for like over a decade now, or thereabouts, is that, even she's noticing that I'm kind of pointing out that there's some kind of going on with some of these people. Like, the men are getting a lot more effeminate that I'm noticing, as well as a lot of the women are kind of getting a little, I'm not quite sure the adjective to use, but let's just say authoritarian. Let me put it that way. Very authoritarian. And to actually use one other example, and I don't think he would be too much adverse to me mentioning this publicly, but there's a colleague of mine who is currently a college student, and I think you might know who I'm referring to. He cannot find anybody on campus. Like, he's been actively looking, and he's single, and he's available. And if there's any women of good character, hey, I can point you to at least one guy who I can at least vouch for. But yeah, he can't find anybody.
Huh.
Yeah, no, he's trying. And he actually, when I last talked to him
Right,
about
right.
this,
And so what happens is, right. I was just going to say people get confused as to the reason why, and they take it personally. And what this information is doing is it's healing. This is healing. This very podcast is going to have a healing effect on the listeners. Because once someone realizes that it's not personal, just like someone eyeballing someone in the market, which is a point I made in a previous video, and kind of protecting your mind against this, aggressive influence. I call it archonic. Hey, man, what are you looking at? I'm going to look back at you. It's not always personal. It's because some people are on autopilot. I think, I consider making a podcast, and maybe I'll do this soon at some point. But I'm not really one to give advice. I'm one to give my opinion, but I can't demonstrate how I've done it. But how do conscious people meet each other? I think the most important thing that I probably could ask instead of that is once you do meet someone,
yeah,
however that happens, how to not let your programming affect moving forward. That would be for the male and the female to both be responsible. The programming, the stuff they're getting from the media, the way that they're taught to view someone else's value. With this person being on a college campus as a libertarian,
yeah, he's openly,
as a white male in today's day and age, he's been made a target, as well as the Middle Eastern male. If only more males could figure this out. I know he does. Others do not. But see, that's how they get us to redirect our aggressions. They really want the males to fight each other after they're in situations without a female. Somehow this is built into our DNA. You're either going to be in a state of love or you're going to be in a state of war. And the state of war is not too different away from suicide. And suicide is the polarity that some people feel suicidal, when the woman leaves them, especially if it's for monetary reasons. And I feel that that's a great evil upon our culture and society, women that have left the males because, a temporary job loss, or maybe he wanted to go in a more freedom-based lifestyle and he lost someone that was really not his mate, but a modern prostitute.
Yeah, well, those individuals
who was with someone solely over his income.
Well, those individuals
right.
who dump their, I guess, former loved ones just for what I personally think are superficial reasons, I think were really just kind of hollow in their own character, weren't they? I mean, they just kind of showed their true colors at that point. It would have been nicer, I guess, for those people that were negatively affected if the revealing of the true colors had been done a lot earlier with less severe circumstances. I think that's just kind of obvious. But yeah, I mean, whether it's, sooner or later, something kind of crops up. But sorry, something you said just sparked something else I wanted to mention. If you think about it just in terms of a numbers game, most people, most Americans that I've come across in my own short lifetime, they are, most of them are quite authoritarian. And so if that is accurate, then what are the implications? I would suggest that the implications are that if most Americans are indeed authoritarian, then that would imply that most American men are authoritarian. And if that is true, I would further suggest that that would imply that most American women are also equally authoritarian. At least just to work this out, a priori. So if that is indeed all true, if that was demonstrated empirically, a posteriori with like statistics and evidence and all that, and if all of that stuff lined up, that automatically, I mean, people on their own time can, crunch numbers and try to, guesstimate what their chances are of finding a loved one. But just more a priori, if what I just said is accurate, then that would imply also that the deck is stacked against you. And that's before we even start getting into issues of being honest with your, whomever you're dating about your ideology or perhaps lack of ideology and so forth. So I think it's important to be realistic in terms of the success of anything going off well. Having said that, I also think it's important to look at what degree the Leviathan, the government, is involved. And unfortunately, not so much the MGTOWs, but more the MRAs are the only ones really kind of pointing this out. And this is the only thing I really agree with them about, Alex, and is really like the family law courts and things more of that nature, where there are such things as whether it ranges from, I mean, sometimes it's in family law, sometimes not, but everything ranging from like false rape accusations to child custody issues to things kind of that admittedly do get quite messy at times. A lot of that can get really
That's some icky energy to go through as a kid.
Yeah.
As a kid, that's icky energy to go through, and your parents are doing that child custody thing, and you're intelligent enough to know that there's deception going on and power plays going on, and like say child support funds going to say the mother or not the child, things like that, and being young enough to know about things like that and pick up on deceptions. So I mentioned earlier, MR, I meant more the Facebook groups. Some of them are just like other Facebook groups. It's a bunch of just stuff. But the family stuff, the men's rights stuff regarding custody, we didn't even get into that. But I mean, yeah, that was really what preceded a lot of this MGTOW stuff, was the court preference in some cases for the female over the male based on hearsay. And so all of this and how the court system is set up really paved the way for this conversation we're having now.
Yes. And not only that, but arguably it could be said, and I'm trying to think on both sides of the fence here, it could arguably be said that a lot of the MRA and or especially MGTOW material is kind of more of like a sociocultural phenomenon that doesn't really involve politics or the government really, at least in one sense, because now you're getting into issues of like market preference and voluntary decisions that are being made, whether they're wise or foolish. But there is a lot of, it's in the sphere of what you could say is the free market, at least in one sense. However, when you get to the family law court specifically, now the government is directly involved, and more specifically, it's the judiciary, where there are laws being, or excuse me, where there are court cases being decided through the coercive monopoly of the state to adjudicate disputes regarding whether it is something more involving parents or even in like divorce cases too, where it's, how do you divide up the property? So, I mean, hell, one of my political field trips that I wrote about was where and I wasn't in trouble or anything, obviously, but I was spectating on some court cases that were going on, because apparently you can actually walk in. Some people still don't believe me about that, but yeah, you can. And there was just all sorts of horrific shit that was going on that's in my report. So I don't know what to say, man. It's like I wish people would get out from behind their computers and actually go to a lot of these political meetings, whether it's city council, whether it's different court cases, hell, even go to a more reformist political organization meeting of one kind or another, and not directly participate, but really just observe and record your experiences and preferably get them published or, get it to someone like me or some other people in the alternative media, so we can start building and start showing that there is a lot of weird crap going on, and it's openly avowed, but the problem is that the information's all compartmentalized in certain specific locales. And so, yeah, it's just, I don't know, man. There's something on with those family law courts, and maybe I will write an article at some point, hopefully in the near future, going into more detail, more on the political end and what these god-awful bar attorneys did. But yeah, I think you're onto something, Alex. Maybe that is the genesis of the more sociocultural type effects, that maybe this really did start with the government and in the judiciary. I mean, that might be it.
Well, then you have issues where women are getting kickbacks from the government for having babies, which I never heard about this before, but apparently it's happened in Australia. It's happening in other European countries now. Putin has organized sex orgies for, they call them the Putin youth, the Russian youth. They want them to have more children for the motherland. They're probably prepping for some major, like Call of Duty, World War, high-tech robot takeover, Terminator, Matrix style, something rather. some big old satanic sacrifice in the future. Who knows? Throwing a little speculation there is the reason why they want so many babies alive. But on another note, they could really get inside the mind of a woman like, whoa, maybe I wouldn't want to have a baby from this part of the world. After all, they are calling those people terrorists. After all, blah, 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 blah. It does get very personal to me. I do see how they have, and how men are just on the psycho end, the psycho men, the dominator men, want to control the actions of women to what race they're with. And I see that in what babies are created. I know this sounds way too speculative, but it's almost as if the current events of today's day and age are really social engineering the new humans of tomorrow. Add in geoengineering and a little bit of bioweapons, social peer pressure, mind control, Facebook, rape hysteria, skewing things a certain way, and you're going to have a certain type of people in the future. And a certain type of people are just not going to be on the earth. Not that this is a great place to be. I'm looking forward to going home wherever that is, and I don't feel earth is it. But that aside, I'm speaking more spiritually. I don't think that I came from another planet in this lifetime. What I'm saying is there's more to our little human experience here. Call it an experiment. And I will also say that, as a single man who has been that way for a number of years since I started adding more spiritual commentary into my programming and leaving Access TV and maybe being more of a fake Alex. I don't know. I've always felt kind of real, but there was a part of me that was really more of into the presentation. And I saw simply wearing a suit jacket had a psychological impact over females, and not just a few, many females. The simple act of wearing a blazer. And I also noticed a connection with me no longer wearing a blazer and actually losing it. Maybe subconsciously I threw it away. And there's reasons for that, which I won't get into, dealing with the person that gave it to me. An old friend of the family. He's kind of more of a dominator male. But with me moving on from that blazer, I felt like there was an aspect of me separating more from mainstream society. And with the change in my content and getting more in the spiritual perspectives, I saw that so-called female fan base to my work evaporate and fall faster than Twin Towers. Oh. To be mostly contacted by email by people that want to emotionally control me and get inside my mind that, they're way into the Archon content, but then they want to tell me that something doesn't exist and they want to be a dominator to me from the get-go in the email, which is really easy to see, those type of behavioral mechanisms. So, I am hoping that men that are doing the right thing can be more accepted by women of today's day and age. But right now, that's not really going. Now, for any alternative media male, to continue my observations, that does have a female by his side, they tend to be a lot more balanced. A lot of the men that have lost their minds or seem to, and some will say that I've lost my mind. Well, it certainly is a more stressful experience, too. And I'm saying this metaphorically for the atheists. If you want to go out slaying the archons of this world, the demons of this world, and pointing at the eye of Sauron, don't think that evil's not going to be looking back at you, that you're not on a spiritual battlefield. When someone is in a loving relationship and they're on a spiritual battlefield, I mean, there's wonders in health that one female hug can do for one male human. Now, when you completely gut out the love of a mother or a love of a spouse, for the good deeds that the male is doing, he has taken on worlds of psychic attack and spiritual assault, which I go through doing the work that I do. There is something, be it mind control or technology, that comes back at us and says, who do you think you are to challenge our rulership? Fuck you. It's like those demons screaming in the movie Ghost, if anybody's seen that movie with Patrick Swayze. And then a guy in the subway is screaming, fuck you, because he wasn't as dark as them. He was a lighter spirit. And so it feels like that to live in this body, and knowing other males that have gone their own way, that are speaking truth, that are not married and are totally single, they go through that shit. There is a vast difference in physical health dealing with the alternative male. Now, how many alternative females do we have, alternative media, that are doing it on their own, that are not Leanne McAdoo, that are self-made? They're out there. They're increasing. And hopefully this will continue to increase So maybe society will balance itself out. Maybe people that are into truth and sharing truth will find each other. But the internet is a fairly new thing. And so we've seen, the dating profiles. We've seen technology be there for people that aren't there physically to get to know each other. We haven't seen, in my opinion, and I'm just using my own terminology here, we haven't seen sexuality evolve yet to the point where good people are out seeking good people, and where enough of the female population is validating those good men. This technological existence in our life has the ability to enhance our lives, but it's also enabled the machine to replace the male for the female. You have an issue with the rapist, you call 911. You don't need to have your family there. You don't need to have a decent male there. You need to call 911. So on a lot of different notes, you can even do a specialized podcast on government becoming the new protector, government becoming the new provider. It's actually more pervasive than what most people that are anti-status have even considered. And once they have that breakthrough, then they'll see the whole picture. So if there was ever an incident of a solar flare or technology going down, relationships would change out of survival.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned
survival. That will not necessarily.
Right. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because good relationships are essential for survival. So if people were engaging, I'm going to sound like an economist for a moment, but if people were really engaging in their own rational self-interest, they wouldn't be treating each other like crap for the most superficial of reasons, much like what you've been describing this go-around. And if you think about it too, and this is my not-so-humble opinion, I really do think that institutions threaten our survival. I don't care which institution we're talking about, although I would say the government is the most serious one, because they have a monopoly on the use of initiating force, coercion basically. But it doesn't have to be limited to government necessarily, and perhaps that's a discussion for another time regarding more of those dynamics. But what I will say here is that institutions, I think, threaten our survival. But unfortunately, the mainstream, and maybe even a little bit more than just the mainstream population, seem to trust the latter over the former. Or to put it a little bit more simply, they seem to prefer to trust institutions over their own fellow man, or even people, friends and family in their own lives, flesh and blood human beings that they can shake their hand or give them a hug. I mean, it's like trust the inhuman monsters of these compartmentalized strangers who don't care about you or your interests, and instead, cast people whom you would otherwise have mutually beneficial, even reciprocal relationships with, where, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. There's no conspiracy or anything bad going on. It's just, we barter, right? I mean, that's the free market, the real free market. But that's kind of seems to what's been happening here is an attempt to demolish at least some basic level of sense of trust and, dare shall I say, solidarity with people, in peer-to-peer relationships. And so, and it's also something else too you said earlier I wanted to touch on briefly. You were mentioning about how the cities are kind of like a hive of encouraging this kind of divisive behavior. Well, yeah, that kind of seems to be the case here in Austin too. And so I've really also been I don't want to get too deeply into this, but what I'll say briefly is that, I've been seriously considering that, I need to go somewhere else. And, I've brought it up with the wife, and we may not be able to do it immediately, that there's going to have to be some forethought. But yeah, the idea is, I've even broached even off-grid homesteading, even to that extent. And let me just say, it was not rejected out of hand, because I think she sees the writing on the wall too. And in fact, I've bragged about her before, and I'll say it again. The wife is smarter than I am. And but she's a lot more reserved than I am too. So the question of, I don't want to say reordering the culture, but I'll just say in terms of personal choice, in terms of, dare shall I say, direct action, the more what do we, or perhaps what do you and I and, even, Jim Bob down the street do to address this is, I would say, one, treat people as you would like to be treated, much like I said in the other podcasts, as much as you can. I would also say there is such a thing as having standards and having principles and standing by those, whatever those happen to be, and choosing your associations on that basis. And yeah, I guess that would also apply romantically as well, right? At least to one extent or another. I mean, there's always room for flexibility in negotiation, I suppose, because I don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. But I do think there is something to having, to be able to walk away from a potential mate too, especially if there's some like weird, freaky stuff going on in a not good way, like you were getting earlier. So, you know what? I do think that people who have demonstrated some sort of initiative, I think, is the main thing to look for here. Whether that initiative takes the form of off-grid homesteading, whether that initiative takes the form of entrepreneurship, which is something a lot of folks don't want to mention about, which I think is actually a lot more important, because think about it this way, Alex, how can you fund your off-grid homesteading if you're not an entrepreneur? If you are dependent on the 9 to 5, if you're dependent on pleasing the boss and his corporate fascist cronies and their special interests and all of that. So actual, real, true independence, if there's not an initiative of a potential romance of someone you're romancing to actually demonstrate it on their own initiative as an individual who is, you were saying a moment ago, but what's maybe a better term than MGTOW? How about good old-fashioned self-confidence? How about that? I know, yeah, that would apply to the women folk too, because I don't really see much of a separation between the male and the female personally. At least in one sense, biology and like what else? I mean, we're both human, right? And so, yeah, man, I would just say that I would just suggest to the listeners that's something to really look for when you're looking for potential lovers in the classic sense of the term. When you're looking for lovers, when you're looking maybe even more so than just a good old rollicking in the hay, or even somebody to maybe share your life with to some degree, maybe even to have a family and reproduce. Shocker, right? Doing it the old-fashioned way instead of instead of this whole, and I understand some people can benefit from science in terms of like in vitro or surrogacy or whatever, but some people are electing to do it, just because it's the hip new thing, because they don't want to deal with the grossness of like, raw sex, as I've heard some people, even locally here, describe it that way. So, how do I put this? Well, if the people you're looking at, the individuals you're looking at, have not demonstrated an initiative, their own self-confidence, being comfortable in their skin, being comfortable in their own skin, and having desires and goals of their own, then maybe they're not right for you. Just something to take in consideration. I know that when I was looking years ago, I said no to plenty of women who were saying yes to me, by the way, and I walked away from them. And when we weren't like deeply entwined or anything, like not even close, we were just dating, right? It's casual, like not even like no kissing even. Like this was like right at the beginning, okay? I said no to plenty. And I would just suggest that the men who are looking right now should consider, having some standards first, and not just falling over for the first, and I will sound a little bit derisive here, but for the first piece of tail that happens to say yes. I do think that, and hell, in some ways, even the good women, actually, especially the good women, will say no to plenty of men. And I'm just saying, hey, why not replicate, for the men, why not replicate what those good women do? But when they do say no, like, hey, maybe we could be friends or maybe business associates, but romance is, no, I don't want to have a life with you, I don't want to sleep with you, and I sure as hell don't want to have your kids, right? And remember, all of this is voluntary. Last time I checked, Alex, nobody was putting a gun to anybody's head. As long as we're not talking about the family law courts, right? But generally speaking, with everything else, nobody's put a gun to anybody's head. And so I think people need to just take a lot of responsibility for the voluntary choices they have made in all aspects of their lives, or as we're talking about specifically here, the voluntary choices regarding issues of romance, sex, and even, you know, procreating with children and family and that kind of thing.
Right. Well, that would require bucking a whole lot of programming for men to not think with their little head. And both biological and social programming for years in Hollywood has dictated that, women only have a certain amount of time to give a blowjob or have sex with a male for her to have value. So this is some of the stuff that is in the American culture behind the scenes. And yeah, there definitely needs to be an evolution. My final comments, to echo Miyagi's thoughts in Karate Kid. Yes, I love those cheesy quotes from the 80s movies. Love the soundtrack, too. Walk left side road, safe. Walk right side road, safe. Walk middle, squish, just like grape. So it's like the wisdom there is pick something, but don't just wander aimlessly on the road. There's a guy named Steve Hoka. He's wandering aimlessly on the road. MGTOW found my videos, went into this phase of I'm going to compliment you, Alex, and send you these MP3s, which can end up creepy when the topic of the MP3s changes from the topic, like, you and I are talking about a topic. Well, what if I started hearing from Kyle? Kyle, you're obsessing on where I'm living, and, why I won't come live with you, and we can be bro buddies. Why am I living off the grid? That felt kind of homosexual. Well, this guy, who I don't believe was a homosexual, was doing that. He was not walking left side road, right side road. He was like, you're really weird for living off the grid. What do? Just shit in a bucket and throw it out the window? Oh, by the way, here's a small donation. And
yeah,
so,
there
was a little bit of donating, but it was going on with some weird, I'm trying to pay to get inside your mind. I'm like, whoa, this is new. This is new. And then he's like, your martial arts stuff or whatever. Like, are you trying to threaten me or threaten others? I just don't understand. So I don't know whether it was a Tourette's issue or a mental illness. There's a lot of similarities to Woody Allen, but I was noticing this guy is trying to hurt my emotions. This guy's trying to friggin' beat me up, and he's acting like, I don't know what I'm doing. So do you have Tourette's? You don't have Tourette's, because he was showing indicators he wasn't aware of his actions. But it was clear that the man had been through a lifetime of pain and female rejection. So I'm just going to chalk this up to another case of a man that hasn't really picked the way to his healing, which is the next part of this rant. Picking a path to your healing, to get out of this, I'm feeling this unhappy feeling, I'm feeling rejected. Okay, well, here's my advice and my current level of human maturity and understanding. And it will evolve as time goes on. I've mentioned the off-the-grid path because monks have separated themselves from society for thousands of years. It's a part of a time-tested spiritual path. Some people take things further and they don't masturbate for periods of time. Some do, but it's really a matter of not necessarily monks, but just people in general, getting away from when you're in a society where it's constantly about worshiping the female torso. Oftentimes Coors Light has an ad of a silhouette of a female, and she's got no head and she's got no arms. There's no blood or anything, but she might as well be one of those, what the hell? No legs, no arms, no head. So they've got us, and then the women that are playing this energy. Well, I'm going to show you a little bit of my flesh, but I'm going to look bad at you if I don't like you or see you as wealthy. So you have a lot of women that are showing a lot of flesh, more and more on those hot days. It's like, are those shorts or is that underwear? I mean, are you trying to cause a physical erection? The fact is, we live in a world of physicality. Yeah. We're not spirits floating around. Man sees naked woman, some man develop erection. That right there could be considered sexual assault. Again, not to get in the archons, but it's like something's going on where things are backwards. Things are backwards, not as they should. And so a lot of things that people think are wrong are actually right, and vice versa. So it's like, on one path, there's going off the grid or becoming a monk or becoming a spiritual being and opting out from obsessing upon lust. And that would, a full MGTOW or a full one on the spiritual path, would be eliminating pornography addiction from his diet. Instead of just going from no women to pornography addiction, the pornography addiction may help them wean off of the attraction they once got. But then at some point, they got to get their biology under control and be a more powerful being. concluding this thought, the other option, the right way, and I mean the right way, right, left, not right, correct, but the other option to left is to really put out your intentions on the type of good woman that you do want to meet. Because they are out there. They are out there. I'm talking to someone that immediately I was attracted to because she wasn't writing with me with a bunch of caps and you're doing this wrong and you're doing that wrong and and she wasn't anonymous and she was who she was. So, maybe I'll meet this person in the future, maybe I won't. But if a person like that's going to hear my YouTube channel and not come at me with an email full of criticism, but like, hey, let's see if we can make a shed together. Here I am. I'm not going to let a lifetime of pain and suffering and archon paranoia, let's just call it for what it is at times, stop me from trusting and loving again. See, that's where they get us. If we've been hurt, to keep us hurt, and then start to see all women the same way. And I feel that there are some angels out there that are being suppressed by the evil of this world. They want them to hide their wings. They want them to hide their consciousness and talk like a little girl in a little girl voice. Oh, yeah, the jock men love to do the girl voice. It's like, that's probably a really bad impression, but we all know the Princess Programming little girl voice. Come on. Who doesn't know the Princess Programming, I'm a little girl voice? But what we really need to see is really the women of this world evolve into their divine feminine. And to move together and stop being afraid of the spiritual warfare. They're going to come and get you if you start. And subconsciously, I think that they have been afflicted with this technology and potential spiritual warfare. There's something out there that's telling them to keep their mouth shut and stay in line. It's a spell. Those are my 2 cents, and I'm sticking with it. Kyle, we hit on a lot of good issues. Those are my final thoughts. Back to you.
Well, let me just put it this way. None of these women whom I might have been attracted to in the past, just to be really raw and honest about this, honestly, they do not seem sexually pleasing to me at all now. And so I love my wife, and I consider myself a family man, even though I am unfortunately childless. But I will say this. Do you think I want to raise potential future children of mine into this kind of urban environment with much of what we've been discussing today? So I think that's another reason for people to consider. Yeah. I think that's another reason for people to consider off-grid homesteading as one potentially vital option. Some people want to go seasteading just as another option. To really kind of look at that as a way also of where do you want your family to kind of, be raised and grow up? Do you want, let's get a little bit more honest. Do you want your potential future sons to be exposed to this kind of thing as they're growing up? Or perhaps even worse, daughters even, and them emulating, or shall I say being tempted in emulating like a baby duck imprints off of these, I think you've referred to in the past as like Babylonian consciousness. It's just kind of like, so there's also an issue here of not just, my own life, your own life, or the life of, Jim Bob down the street. There's also the issue of the next generation and how they're going to be raised. And, perhaps that's getting into a bit of a different topic, what some people would call peaceful parenting, although I take issues with that for other reasons. But regarding the issues of romance and MGTOW and such, I think people really need to really sit down and really kind of evaluate their own lives and really judge the character of the people that they have in their lives and also the people that they are romantically attracted to, and really be really honest about what their principles are, what their values are, and what exactly do they want out of life. Do they just want to be promiscuous and just kind of, go spend some time with some harlots? Because for some people, that is actually the right thing for them to do, because they really aren't family men. And, Lord knows they would probably be among the worst kind of parents and probably very authoritarian. Having said that, I think there's also people who may not want to necessarily reproduce, but they do want to have that kind of intimacy, even physical intimacy, that I think even you've mentioned in your previous videos about that can be very therapeutic and healing, especially of other things that have happened in one's past. And then I think also a third route to go would be for those who do not just want, the physical intimacy and such, and having something resembling a life together, grow old together, which is what I'm trying to do basically. But also like, if you can, and especially if it's affordable and whatnot, like actually reproduce and have like little one, the pitter patter of little feet, and like build, almost like rebuild civilization, like a real one this time. Not this fakey corporate media crap, but like something resembling actual, actual value, something that respects reality, that much of which has been revealed by economics. And you know what, I think I will probably end on this, because there a lot of the social justice idiots and others really are socialists. They really are. I mean, if you go deep into a lot of what they're saying, they want to, spread the wealth around and redistribute by way of government and such. And, I'll do this off the top of my head, but F.A. Hayek said something that I think really kind of shows why free markets are essential and pivotal and related to the family unit specifically, as well as people who are single, but family specifically, which is more or less this. The curious task of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they really know about what they imagine they can design. And so when you have all these central planners run roughshod over entrepreneurs and other businessmen, real businessmen, not the corporate fascist cronies, but real businessmen trying to make a life for themselves, trying to be responsible and provide for their families, try to, even explore the frontiers of human experience, whether that be unexplored portions of this planet, whether that be colonizing the bottom of the ocean, or maybe, just maybe, getting off this rock at some point, which would be really cool personally. Well, a lot of those different projects are going to involve people working together and treating each other well, just on a basic, being polite and being respectful and in a good way. I don't mean the police officer sense of it, but treating people as if they were, as if they are human, because they are. And really that kind of, that mutually beneficial give and take, which is evocative of the free market. Then once all of that pretty much comes into play, and whatever somebody's personal lifestyle is, whether they are being more promiscuous, whether they are romantic but no children, or they do have a family that they're raising, especially young families, then, the sky is the limit. I mean, I honestly think, Alex, and I don't want to get too spiritual here either, but I really do think our destiny is in the stars. And, I think humanity can make it, can do it. But the cost of that is giving up these superstitions. The cost of that is giving up all this superficiality of much of what you and I have been explaining, of giving up the consumerist, like Plato's cave, right? The shadows on the wall, of giving all of that up, giving up the illusion, well, I think what you've mentioned many times before, the illusion of separation, giving up all this false crap, and really appreciating reality as it is, whether it be human nature in one respect or another, or in some other ways, maybe less tangible, and I'll leave it at that. So once people are willing to actually get together, work together, shake hands, and produce, not destroy, because that's what the government does, that's what these other, nefarious vested special interests do. But you actually create and you produce and you build. And if people can start doing that and be real entrepreneurs, then I think the human race has something resembling a future. And, I just wish people had just more self-confidence and were otherwise, how shall I put it, had a good, stood up straight and, kind of like looked reality in the eye, looked each other in the eye, and recognized, yeah, there are some bad folks who are trying to hurt everybody, but you know what? If we act as rational as possible, and yes, you were mentioning empathy too, I think that's important as well, then I think there is resembling a frontier that a lot of us can reach. But if people are going to be just kind of fall down into this cesspit, this postmodern hell of nowhere and no one except the raw lie and power of the moment, if that's where people want to go, then nothing good is going to come of this system, of its robotic, just anti-creative zeitgeist. So there is a choice to be made. There are absolutely choices to be made. I know what I'm doing, and you know what you're doing. And I guess what it is really for the listeners is, what do they want to do in their own lives regarding issues of romance, regarding, hell, not even just issues of romance and family, but also issues of friendship, of just even platonically, just getting along with people, and having business associates and so forth, and actually like having a life instead of that they create for themselves, instead of just these authoritarians who just want to shove you into a box and say you must do things this way because they've always been this way, no matter who gets hurt. Doesn't matter we violate property rights. Doesn't matter that we initiate force all the time. You will do as we say because we said so, because we falsely imagine ourselves to be your rulers. I say nix to that. You and I can live without rulers and be, to borrow a phrase from another individual whom I will not name, we can be the alpha males of our own lives.
Well said, and I just want to echo something. I wanted you to have the last word, but I can't not say something. I think that is the solution, the evolution of human consciousness, a return to the more mindful ways of days old, where people worked together to build a small business, to build a home. And there is something invigorating about that, and I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm speaking for a lot of women out there. It's, whether people are building a shed together, or building a home, or building a business. And I'm not the only male out there that's hyper capable, but I don't like dealing with money. Is it really our nature to deal with money? A lot of successful men in relationships have worked with women where they've handled some of the finances, and they have not been the stereotype of the woman that goes and spends a bunch of stuff at the mall and blah, blah, blah. In fact, quite the contrary, helping make sure certain bills get paid, making sure certain goals get met. So, there's a fair amount of demonization of women as gold diggers that isn't necessarily justified. Sometimes some of them can think well enough and put in their contribution, their analytical way of looking at things, while the male contributes his part. I do see evidence of these successful male-female partnerships with small businesses in the alternative media and in the world in particular of sales and marketing. And I think there's nothing more awesome sounding than people involved in selling something that's worthwhile. On the contrary, there's also examples of men and women that are in small businesses together where they're robbing people together. And isn't that romantic? A couple thugs trying to rip off a piece of crap land that ain't worth nothing. So there's versions of men and women working together for good, and then you have obviously other versions of that. So, that would be our suggestion to know what those mindful relationships are in our own lives. And a little piece of advice somebody gave me, which I do take a little bit seriously, but try to see yourself the way you want others to see you. And that could be done selfishly, but there's a mindful way to do that as well. So, if I want to be respected for what I've created organically on my own, not as a slave, but as Alex Ansary, the YouTuber, well, that's the intention I put out. And it may take years for that to pay off, for me to meet the right person for me, for it to not matter how much I have. But knowing that when I meet the right person, if that happens, there's actually potential there for people to actually start their own business. I've thought about this for years, not sit there and live in squalor. And I think that there is a documented history of businesses starting that way. And couples strengthening their marriage and relationship because of the partnership and cooperation involved in sharing a business where you trust your business partner. So I think that is the key for a lot of healthy relationships where there's balance, not just one provider and one receiver, one dominator, and there's balance to the small business couple model. I'd like to experience it one day. I think it'll actually help propel my content forward. But again, again, there I'm getting spiritual again. Sometimes I think it requires an act of God.
Well, yeah,
To
preparation
override
meeting
what I call the archonic interference. And you know
preparation
what?
meeting
The
opportunity. Yeah.
God or whatever that I identify to be outside the world of Islam and outside the world of Christianity. I know that there are some times in my life where I could have clearly died in a vehicle, and other things clearly could have happened to me. So it's only because I believe that divine intervention has already happened in the past that I believe it can happen again. But there's not a doubt in my mind as we close here that my own perception or sense of alienation from most of the world has actually done me a favor and has brought me greater discipline and brought me additional insight into relationships that I would have never had before. Had the first woman that I ever fell in love with, really, that was the first person to really break my heart and tell me that I'm not lovable. Had that not happened, had I not met those super kinky women in Portland that didn't know the first thing about intimacy and love, had I not had those experiences, had I not had the current experience of putting out good content and still not seeing available partners that seem to have a clear head on their shoulders appear and not want to control and send veiled emails with, you're wrong on this, get a grip, like vampire stuff, vampire stuff. Had I not gone through all this, I wouldn't have this knowledge. I wouldn't have this knowledge. But given the opportunity to live a happy life, not so much married, but in a partnership with someone, I would much rather have that than be discussing MGTOW issues. But if these podcasts are helping people, there's no doubt these are helping people, including women, then it's good that we talked about this today. And I shared all these personal details over the last few years that most people will never share in a million years with their own birth name.
Yeah.
I can tell you, Kyle, it's really liberating. And
yeah,
it
I can say
actually helps me make that step forward to meeting the right person by getting through all this dirt in my youth and discussing it. And most men are totally shamed against talking about these things, which is why I get personal emails thanking me for the YouTubes that I put out, because they feel that they can't for whatever reason.
Yeah,
I feel that I can.
That is a recurring thing I've seen. And if there was like one sentence I could say to sum up a lot of what I've been trying to get across, it would be this. I don't know who should sleep with whom, but I know that rape is wrong. And so whether that coercion is by way of government or it's by way of like street criminals or even the old-fashioned organized crime, the fact of the matter is I don't want to centrally plan anyone's lives. That's up to the spontaneous order of the free market to work its way, and people can, engage in their own rational self-interest and decide what's right for them. I'm simply pointing out that there is some very weird crap going on, as you yourself are and have been, that there's some really odd crap going on. And you know what? I think I will probably write that article on the family law courts, because if we can strike the root, not just hack at the 20,000 branches of evil as Henry Thoreau described it, but rather strike the root and bring statism to an end, then I think that you'll see a lot of ripple effects. And one of the ripple effects is that people will feel I'm speculating, will feel a lot more relaxed about romance, about dating, about even if they weren't sleeping around, at least it won't be arguably as awkward and kinky, or in a bad way, right? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people will be much more friendly, and people will be much more friendly to families as well. So what I'm trying to say is I think, and also one other option I forgot to mention earlier, even people who are aesthetics, people who really are voluntarily celibate, or even those who are asexual, apparently that's a thing now. Even those folks who kind of eschew that, I think they'll benefit too, because I know many of them have been complaining about like the marketing of the consumerist corporate culture with all of the kind of sex-driven whatever the hell. What I'm trying to say is that if we can strike the root, I personally think just about everybody will benefit, except, of course, for those who falsely imagine themselves to be our rulers. They can lose as far as I'm concerned. But pretty much everybody else who doesn't want to be a control freak, an authoritarian, a statist, and just grip people and like in this put them in the iron grip of the state, but rather through the invisible hand we can voluntarily live our chosen lifestyles in the way that each one of us individuals sees fit. And I think that applies here with regards to these type of issues. So, are the MGTOWs or the MRAs worth a damn? I've got my own skepticism, but perhaps I think you are onto something. Maybe even I will admit, maybe a more spiritual way of looking at this is preferable.
It's almost a chicken and the egg. Right. It's like a chicken and the egg kind of discussion, but reverse that you're getting at almost, because I'm looking at it like, yes, if we could remove these outside interferences, media, mass media, mind control, the state. Well, with the state comes everything else, including that allowership for those corporations, 5 or 6 of them, to own the media.
Mm-hmm.
That's a result of this corporate state bond control that some people call fascism. At the same time, concluding this thought, the very decisions that people have made, and in this one we're leaving aliens out of it and being all about self-responsibility, men and women helped create the state as it is today.
Yeah.
With the civilization, here we are civilized, and now I need shampoo. Now we need consumer items. Again, a lot of things are coming. Is it male or female? This isn't attacking women, but the number one consumer group that's targeted with all these ads.
Yeah.
So it's like left to our own devices, I think there could be some healing. See, if there was a solar flare and there was no grid, would there be no state then? Maybe there would. But would those greater dynamics that are kind of within us consciously be worked out? And then with that, I'll have to leave it. Time will tell, Yeah. Time will tell. Humanity can go in any type of direction at this point. It really can, depending on what happens and how we react. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're individuals. And I think that we need to see some greater signs of the world waking up on a larger level.
Yeah.
To kind of, as the phrase goes, be out of the forest. Until then, it's almost as if we're still in the downslide. And the divide between male and female, I feel, will only grow greater as we grow older in our adulthoods. And some pretty upsetting things are going to start appearing in the news. They're going to make some people really question how long they want to hang around on Earth.
Yeah.
Now, I think we just have to kind of go forward with this, and hopefully through our podcasts kind of help shine light on this. Because ultimately a lot of women out there don't understand men, and a lot of men out there don't understand women. And ultimately you have a lot of dominator, as you said, men and women. And it almost seems as if, well, it is that way, that this dominator consciousness has outpopulated the friendly, cooperative, not communist, but the people that can probably live in a village with a few people and not kill each other, but just kind of mind their own business and, don't tread on me and I won't tread on you. It seems that that's really the minority of the population.
Yeah, it is.
Views reality that way.
Yeah,
well,
and
we'll continue this conversation.
Yeah, and unfortunately that does seem to be the way it is, at least for now. There's always hope for the future, but, who knows? Time will tell, like you said.
Right. There are cycles, and we need to think beyond 10 years, 50 years, 100 years. And some of these male-female dynamics have been happening for thousands of years. So, we'll also get out of our own egocentric, it's all a matter of what happens this decade bullcrap. It's a new year and all this manufactured Gregorian time nonsense.
Yeah.
We're really trapped in a larger sea of human experience. And that's the most important big picture. Not take things personally. Like there's things going on that we don't understand that are really causing this that we're looking at.
Well, Alex, thank you for taking the time to discuss this with me. I was kind of befuddled initially by some of the MGTOW stuff, and maybe I think you've kind of illuminated to me what my concerns were. But yeah, there's a lot more to the story and such. So again, I appreciate it, man, as always.
You're welcome.